Danny in LA.
Yes.
You're live with Eric and V.
Well,
How's it going?
Louisiana.
Oh, Louisiana.
Louisiana. There we go.
I want to say Louisiana, not Los Angeles.
I'm absolutely embarrassed.
Eric has not had enough coffee today.
Danny in Louisiana. Of course it's Louisiana. Why would I? What did you want to talk about today? Please help me get through this, Danny.
Well, it's this idea of evidence with respect to God. I'm not so sure if it really applies to the notion of God, and I'll try to illustrate, right? Suppose we went in a time machine and we went back to around the time Jesus died and supposedly resurrected and ascended into the sky, right? Now, let's say us three, we went here, you saw the death of the crucifixion of Christ. You saw him resurrect. That's to say you saw a dead body, it became alive, and then you saw this body ascend very much in the way that the New Testament describes, right? Mm-hmm. Now, we all might be convinced at that point that maybe there's something true about Christianity, but imagine if we had a fourth individual who thought, no, it's possible that there's some natural explanation for everything that I saw. Maybe it's some kind of biological phenomenon that I'm not aware of in terms of certain bodies.
Well, I mean, if we're already at time travel levels of sci-fi, that wouldn't be an unreasonable thing to talk about, right? Like, what if...
I mean, we can break it down a whole lot more simply. Danny, imagine that you have an old radio, and for some reason it's not working. Would you take it apart, or would you assume that gremlins are in the radio?
I would take it apart.
Okay. So you took it apart and you're looking at the pieces, and there's a piece that's broken. Would you assume that a gremlin broke it?
No, I wouldn't make that claim or assumption.
Okay. So you definitely are looking for naturalistic explanations that describe and help you understand what's going on, right? So it seems like you're using and looking for naturalistic explanations to understand things. So you put it back together and you plug it in and it's working. Are you assuming that gremlins are in the radio making it work?
No.
Exactly. I don't think it's a hard stretch. I don't think it's a hard stretch to have that same kind of thing for God. We do it with medicine. We definitely don't want to assume that somebody's being possessed when they need insulin. Right? We don't want to assume. Go ahead.
Well, the point is that I really don't see that as an equivalence. I don't see it as an analogous or analogy to what I was saying. The point is that if there's some kind of anomaly, let's take your radio example, and the radio just started floating in midair, right? And then it changed into a chicken. I don't know, right? The point is that is consistent. There could be some set of natural laws that could explain that. We just are not, we had never come by such a kind of observation.
But it's even worse than that. Even worse than that, because if we really want this to be analogous, it's, hey, Danny, you're going to come over to my house and I'm going to tell you, Danny, guess what? There's a radio and it flew into the air and it turned into a chicken. And you said, Eric, where's the chicken? I don't have it. Where's the radio? I don't have it. Did you see it? No. How do you know about this? I read it in a book. Would you believe me?
Well, I don't think, let's just say that we both saw it. Okay.
But we didn't. So, and that's where the analogy breaks down. Okay, in the hypothetical, sure.
Well,
I'm trying to get at a more fundamental issue. We can get into
let's get down to the brass tacks here. What is your final thesis here?
The point is that if we were to witness something that that most people would qualify as a miracle, there's always going to be the possibility that it could explain naturally, right? Always, no matter what you observe. Take any observation, there will be always some possible naturalistic explanation. So you could grant all of the empirical things in the Bible, and
isn't that damning?
So if there is always going to be a naturalistic possible explanation, why would we not pick the natural explanation?
Well, that's just going to be depending on our background knowledge. So like in the radio case, we all have background knowledge about what makes radios work, what makes them break down. But I don't have any background knowledge with respect to radios turning into chickens. So if I saw something like that, there's a puzzle here. Do I think that it's some naturalistic explanation, or do I think it's something?
But that's the God of the gaps argument, isn't it? Because at some point we didn't know how radios worked. Did that mean that before we understood radios were supernatural?
No, but I didn't actually make a conclusion there. I'm saying you're faced with making a conclusion, right?
Right.
So
and my question is, why conclude anything other than this works naturally in a way we don't understand yet?
I think I answered that it just depends on your background and knowledge and your background beliefs, right? It's not going to be, I don't think there's going to be rigorous criteria for making one decision over another if it's that anomalous, right?
And that's where I think I'd have some pretty rigorous criteria if a radio turned into a chicken. I'd be like, show me these facts right now.
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
Well, no,
okay, so granting your response, we come at this and we have our background knowledge, our background education and understanding of the world to make a decision. Does everyone have equally valuable and accurate background knowledge and understanding of the world?
I don't know how to answer the question. We all have our past experiences, and that's kind of where our inductive reasoning kind of comes from, right? That there's these patterns in our experiences, and we make inferences from them. But the problem becomes is when we see something, right, that does not track anything in terms of our background information, and we have a choice whether, okay, is there some? I agree that there's some possible naturalistic explanation, but it also could be an intentional explanation, right? And if you choose one over the other, I don't think any is going to be more or less rational.
So you're saying, okay, so the idea of correspondence theory of truth versus cohesive theory of truth is essentially what you're getting at here. So I'm defining a true thing or a thing that exists as something that corresponds to our, best understanding of reality. And it sounds like you're saying that something is true as long as it is backed up by prior experience that is internally coherent.
Well, I think the problem with correspondence theory of truth is it's susceptible to something called Bradley's objection. So the idea is that, like, if there's this proposition, like, let's say, New York City is the capital of New York State, right? And that corresponds to something in the world, and it's in virtue of that relation that it's true. But then there's the relation, right? It's relation to both the proposition and the state of affairs in which, you have New York City and the New York State. And there's going to be some kind of relation between that, and then there's going to be another relation between that, and it's going to cause an infinite regress. That's one of the reasons why I don't accept correspondence theory of truth. I don't know if I explained it well.
Infinite regress is just the word of the day, it seems like.
I actually don't see a problem there.
Right. How does the coherence theory of truth get out of there? Like, if that's going to be your argument, I don't see how any version of anything could not end up being infinite regress, including a God, frankly.
Well, the point about I think you're talking about the coherence theory of truth. That has to. I think there are a lot of versions of the coherence theory of truth, but the most basic is that something is justified in virtue of. Go ahead. Did you have something to say?
I just wanted to make sure that we were back on the tracks here and talking specifically about what you wanted to call in about.
Yeah, I'm fine. I don't want to digress or go on a tangent.
This is something we love doing. And we would absolutely, but we just want to make sure we're on the same pathway here. So you called in, and it says in the notes, why do atheists need evidence for God to believe in it?
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Mm-hmm. The point is that I am making the claim that it's just not a matter of evidence at all, right? Because it's just going to be dependent on one's background beliefs in terms of what counts as an explanation for belief.
Yeah. Does it matter to you that it's true?
It does.
Okay. Is truth for you different than truth for me?
We've established.
Well, we could I could just use the correspondence theory of truth so we don't go on a silly philosophical tangent. Sure. But the point is that I think
we live in the same universe? Do we live in the same universe?
Well, presumably, yes, hopefully.
Okay, let's grant that and move forward. We need to understand things about this universe. We want to understand as many things as we can. And so we have to evaluate the evidence to come to conclusions.
But not everything is a matter of evidence. Like, think about mathematical and logical truths. Those are not a matter of evidence. How do I know a thing is a thing? How do I know that A is not A? Yeah,
now you're just playing word games. Honestly, if you want to try and swap around verbs and nouns so that things, no. A is A because we define it to be A. And if we decide to define A differently, then it would be something different. But the fact
But
that
presumably we're having I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Presumably we're having a philosophical dispute, not a semantic dispute. Typically what people mean by evidence is what they would expect to see given something to be true, right? So if there was a horse in my room, there are certain observations that would confirm that horse being in my room. There would be something that goes neigh, it would have hooves, whatever, right? But there are certain things that generate no such expectations that we can still prove apart from observations. And I gave an example like math and logic, right?
No.
Math and logic are just... you think there's...
Do you think that we live in some kind of Platonic universe wherein math and logic are just some abstract concept that are intangible? What the hell, dude? These are explanations that we have for the world around us. We use numbers because we developed these concepts so that we can understand the world around us. This is linguistic. But the fact is, to point to something like that and say it exists in some kind of Platonic realm makes absolutely no sense, and I'm not going with that assumption. How do you explain Go ahead.
But the point is that if you understand evidence the way I just construed it, what you would expect given something to be true, is expect to observe, okay? Then I don't see the sort of generation... when we talk about the number 9, that it's odd, that's divisible by 3, yada, 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 right?
Okay.
Those are all true.
Yeah, so let's plant this right back where we started. Okay? Should you expect any kind of evidence for God? Does God answer prayers?
I don't think so. Well, it depends on what you mean by answer, but...
Wow, that is a semantic
I thought
game.
we weren't talking semantics.
Yeah, that is a ridiculous thing on its face, and shame. So, okay, we'll leave the God thing and answering prayers on the table.
Let's go to... Give me the opportunity to explain myself. I would ask that you give me the opportunity to explain myself. You could ask God for something. He could hear the prayer, but he might have a different plan in terms of meeting your prayer, right? So
what you're saying is essentially God is unfalsifiable.
Well, at least as far as prayer is concerned.
Okay. God is unfalsifiable. Danny agrees. Why should we believe things that are unfalsifiable?
Well, because there are certain things that can be proved to be true that are unfalsifiable, like God or... math.
Wait.
You can't use God to... no.
My brain just... It did a thing. That was weird. No, the definition of unfalsifiable is that you cannot falsify it. Therefore, there is no evidence for or against it that will stand up to scrutiny.
Falsification comes from Karl Popper, right? Karl Popper applied the falsification criteria to empirical empirical stuff, science stuff, right?
Okay.
But when you're talking, falsification does not apply to logic, metaphysics, and... Go ahead.
So
you just said God was unfalsifiable, and now falsifiability doesn't apply.
And also, if you're going to, again, compare logic and metaphysics to some kind of Platonic thing, I'm out. Because if you want to have that conversation, we can have that conversation on another channel. No.
Okay.
No,
well,
we're not going to do that with numbers, and we're definitely not doing that with your God.
The point is that you're a naturalist. So what I'm saying is going to be gibberish in terms of, relating falsification to everything. I don't know.
You are...
Okay.
This is pretty close to gibberish. I don't know if it's because I'm a naturalist or not, but the point is we both agree that God is unfalsifiable. So I'm good with I'm good with that. That's cool.
The time to believe in God then is the time that we all understand that we're the Matrix as well, or some kind of brain in a vat.
But there are a lot of things that are true, that are unfalsifiable, that are shown deductively. Because, like I said, if falsification is understood...
We'll talk about numbers on your next call. Trust me.
All right.
I think the way you're treating numbers is painful. But we'll get there. Take care, buddy.
All right, bye.
I feel like I just ran around the yard chasing a kid.